Good morning, guys. So I I want to do some quick stuff. I want to tell a story, and I have a couple stories, and I figure I'll go ahead and share some of these. They're just things that have happened to me, and I'm actually more of a storyteller for some things, but I realized on my YouTube channel, I really haven't told any stories, you know? Um, and that's because a lot of my stories, I don't have a lot of stories in code. Although I do have stories in entrepreneurship and working for myself. But just in general, you know what? Like, let me do some sharing, right? Um, and I think one story specifically that is kind of important, and for me, like, really sticks in my mind, um, is when I moved to California. So shortly after graduating college, um, and the reason why it's such a big deal is because I turned down a lot of money. Like that's why. Um, so I once upon a time, right? So shortly after graduating college, I graduated college um, with a BA for animation, right? And at this point, I had been doing some motion graphics on the side for a while, and a little bit of character animation. Um, and what was happening is I also had a bunch of experience doing video editing. I had done that for years, right? So what ended up happening is I actually ended up getting a job where they called me up and they wanted me for a job in California. And it was for a new company, and basically they were going to be doing some broadcasting of video games. And when it all came down to it, long story short, I had to go in and edit literally like 5 hours worth of footage every day. And this was a 7 day a week kind of cycle. I think they took 1 day a week off. I can't really remember quite the schedule anymore. Um, I arrived, and being a startup, they didn't have anything ready, right? They had like, a beastly Mac computer and some programs, and they're just like, hey man, whatever you need, let us know. And so, I got like, okay, we need Photoshop, we need After Effects, we need, some of this stuff, right? We were using Final Cut, all this stuff. It's not really important. Um, so the point is, eventually, a lot of the production was being done by me. Actually, in the beginning, all of the production was being done by me. And it was a lot, but I was young, man. I was excited, my first job, and I was getting paid really well. I mean, I was, what, 21, 22 or something like that, right? And I'm making 60K. Like, that's awesome. I thought, like, yes, I've made it, right? Majority of what I was doing was video work, though. And, you know, although I'm okay with it on a daily basis, and specifically what I was doing was not super creative, and it was a lot of work, but I didn't mind. I was getting paid well, and of course, when you translate the salary into hours, I probably wasn't being as paid well as when you kind of do it like that way. Well, anyways, what ends up happening is I'm really just feeling like, dude, I tell my boss, I'm like, hey, I really need some help in here. Like, I need help. So I got an assistant. Sweet. Awesome. So I got an assistant. And that helped with the workload a little bit. But it wasn't enough. Like, we're doing a huge production here. So we were able to get another one. And another one. And another one. And eventually, you know, within a short bit of time, we had created a team and production team. And being a startup, and especially in the broadcast and all that stuff, like, we were kind of figuring things out along the way, which is totally fine. It was a really good experience, and I learned an entire culture I didn't really know existed back then. um, I didn't really know about, like, the video game culture and video games, and I met professional, Halo players and professional StarCraft players, and these are just regular people, just like you or me. They're just really, really good at this game, and they were all really cool people. Like, all everybody I met was really cool. Um, but it was interesting to hear all these, how they got into games, and the passion projects behind esports and all that stuff. Well, anyways, what ends up happening is, like I said, I get really just tired, man. Now, my passion is animation, right? Uh, Character animation specifically, and that's what I wanted to do. And the way I was thinking about it was like, okay, well, you know what? Like, I'm going to. I was doing this other training from a company called AnimationMentor.com, and if you want to be a character animator, now it's the most streamlined, direct way to do that. Like, you skip college and you go directly to that. AnimationMentor.com. That's what you do now. In the beginning, though, it was still kind of getting its bearings, and it was starting to become more of a reputable company. People were really respecting it, and so I went into it, and my work was doing good, and then I just didn't have time to put into my work, right? And that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking that I could do this job, make the money to help pay for school, because I didn't want to get any more debt, right? Um, that's a whole different story. But that was my goal, and to my credit, I was able to, they put me up in housing and everything, so I was able to save a lot of money, and a majority of my paychecks went towards debt, went towards debt, went towards debt, and so that was good. Now, everybody, when they're working on stuff like this, like, they work hard, they hustle. Your body does have a limit, and I was reaching my limit. Like, I was just exhausted, because of the nature of the system. I was working the graveyard shift, so I kind of changed my entire sleeping schedule, and I ended up, having no social life whatsoever for a while. Not really a social life. I didn't really do extra fun things, because I mean, my whole life was essentially go to work, come back home, eat a little, and at the time play a little StarCraft, and then that's it, right? And then repeat, 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 repeat. Um, but that's not quite what I wanted to do, and more importantly, at the time, I was trying to get my animation portfolio together, and my work was being critiqued, and it was lacking. It was lacking because I couldn't put in the time like I used to, and so I had to make an important decision. You know, what's more important? This job with money, or essentially like this next job that I want to have, which is mosquito, or this next job I want to have, which is in character animation, which is really like the dream, right? That's what I've wanted to do since I was a kid. And so what ended up happening is, um, we were getting busy, we were getting ready for this crazy stuff, and at this point we have a team together and everything, but basically I let them know, like, hey guys, you know I gotta give like my 2 weeks notice. I can stay longer, but I'm just saying, like, I'm on my way out, right? And I communicated to them that I and they already knew, because they were appreciative and did some stuff. Um, but at the end of the day, I let them know, like, hey, I'm just exhausted, and this is, not, we already know, like, they knew that I wanted more for animation, and this isn't necessarily like my final destination. This isn't, where my passion is, and I want to help you guys out. I'm not gonna, like, up and dry and leave or anything, but this is what's going on. And so what ended up happening is they were they were distraught, because as far as the company goes, like, they were very heavily invested in me because I had built a bunch of the infrastructure. I knew how everything functions and everything works. And I was, prepared to help offload that to the next guy. But what ended up happening is, they were immediately, which surprised me because this will probably never happen again in my life, but they say, well, oh, well, first they mentioned like, well, maybe you're not tired just because you're working graveyard. I'm like, no, no, I'm calculating my hours. Like, I am putting in 80 to 100 hours a week. I work 7 days a week. Like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and like, I had to ask permission, to get a day off, right? I would say like, hey, so is it okay if I take Sunday off? You know, um, my we had a wedding for my aunt, which was in Vegas. It was a few hours away. I drove, and even then they were like, "Oh, oh yeah, no. If your stuff's not ready, like I don't know if we can have anybody else handle it and be ready." So, it was a whole thing, and once again, I get it, whatever. But the point is, during this meeting where I tell them how exhausted I am and all this stuff, um, they offered, which will never happen again, double my pay. They're like, well, what if we double your pay, right? And so in my head, I'm like, oh my god, that's over $100,000. That's $120,000. I do not make $120,000 right now, just so you guys know, not even close. I don't. I have yet to be offered anything where they will ever say, I'll double your pay. That just hasn't happened, and I don't think it's a common thing. It's definitely not. It's definitely a once in a lifetime kind of thing, I would imagine. And I knew that, and I processed it real quick. Unbeware to them. I can't remember if it was the night before or the night after, but I had thought this hard, really hard, and all the way through. Because, a majority of why I was there was because of the money, right? I was there because, I was in debt, and it was an opportunity to move out to Cali, and essentially it was, that moment where I just need to get rid of as much debt as possible, and it just made sense, right? But my body, my social life, all that stuff was suffering, and what ends up happening is I later that night or earlier or the previous night, I can't remember, and I can't find the video, which sucks. But I actually recorded myself on my phone. I recorded myself and left a message to my future self, which even though I can't see it, I remember it very well. So I guess it achieved its effect. Because I would know that one day I would be in a situation like today. Today, things financially are very tight. I won't go into the details, but let's just say stuff's happened, things are going on, and things are very, very tight. And I knew there would be days like this in the future. Days where you're worried about finances, you're worried about how things are working, and I'll always look back to that time of when I was making more money or offered more money. And, I knew I would be saying to myself things which I have. And then I think of that video. But I knew I would say things along the lines of, well, yeah, but I mean, if I work just like an extra few months, if I work just extra month or two, just a few months, like that double pay, that could put me ahead. That could whatever, whatever. And the thing is, like, I knew that it was just going to exhaust me. It was going to basically ruin what I had invested and what I really wanted, which was my animation process. I knew it was just basically for money. And at the end of the day, like, I realized and identified that the only reason I was working or would even really consider doing something, killing myself like that, doing all that, was for the money. It's because I needed the money, right? And because I'm fearful, right, without the cash. Well, I reminded myself in the video, I simply said, like, Chris, no matter how tired you are in the future, no matter how bad you think you could have stayed in it just a little bit longer, no matter how much you think that it wasn't that bad, right? Because I knew that would happen too. Like, in the future, I'm not going to be as tired. I'm not going to be as clear-headed about how it was like at that time. So what I did is I recorded myself and I said, like, right now you are exhausted. You cannot function. Your life, this is not going to work. Like, you cannot do this. You said no, you cannot do this. You're moving forward. Essentially just reminding myself hard that, future Chris, past Chris is clearly telling you you can't do it. Just no matter how much you think you could have got a few extra grand out of it, you could have grunted it out a little longer. That maybe it might be worth it just for a little bit more money. It's not. It's not worth it. Especially with the things you wanted to do. Like, it's just not worth it. And you know, I found that helpful for me personally, like really, really helpful, because one, it's me talking to myself, and it's genuine, and it's done at that time, right? At the time, it's real. It is fresh. You know what was going on, and those words, like, they're encouraging. They're basically like, it's gonna get better. It's which is true, right? And so here I am in this situation, financial stress. It happens to everybody. Everybody has it at some point, right? And the thing is, oh no, I thought I wasn't recording this whole time, so I pressed, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to blurt that one out because I just realized that. Okay. Anyways, but yeah, so I recorded that, and what it did is it made me realize that um, you know, it can't all be about the money. It just can't, right? You you cannot be working just for money, no matter how much it is, right? Even if it's something like, $500,000. Okay, there's a lot of questions about that, right? That kind of changes things a bit. Um, but when you are offered something that's reasonable enough that within your lifetime you can get back to that. Like, I'm not there, but I envision that I will be there. I envision that actually I'll be past there at some point. That hasn't happened, and I don't know how long that'll be. But at some point, that will happen. And the whole point being, it can't all be for money. And the more I've grown and gotten older, and now I have a family, the more I realize that, there are things much more important than the finances, right? You definitely are going to have financial stress. Totally understand. But don't let that occupy your entire life, so much so that you miss out on the life around you. That you miss out on, your kid growing up, the time with your friends, the time with your family. You know, um, this is the kind of stuff that, you know, I realize that, I'm young. I don't want to be working while I'm young and then miss out on all these opportunities. And it's one thing if you're putting in the time into something that you enjoy, into something that you're investing in, into something that you want to grow. But if you're working a job that you don't like, for whether it's whatever reasons, right? If you're working a job that you don't like and it's strictly because of the paycheck, it's okay to leave that job. Now, I understand everybody has financial minimums, right? You've got bills to pay. You have things you need to do to survive, right? You have debt. You have all these things going on. And what I want to say is, I understand, but don't let that dictate all your moves. You know, uh, don't don't be a slave to whatever financial means you have, or whatever financial means you have, by whatever financial problems you have, right? Um, Pay your bills on time. Put in the work, put in the effort. But if you are struggling, find your craft, find your passion, invest in that, put the time and resources into that, kill yourself on that, so that when you start making at least the same amount of money, even if it's not as much, the same amount of money, you're at least doing what you like to do, right? And putting in less time, or you have more reasonable hours. Because there are things outside of work, there are things outside of money. And I know everybody says that. I know everybody likes to say, like, oh, money isn't everything. I mean, I understand that there's few people who have had my same experience where you are offered more than you've ever seen, and you immediately are like, no, it's not about the money. And that's exactly what happened. Is they offered me double my pay. Like, what if we double your pay? And that was on the table. And I thought about it for about literally half a second. I was like, no, it's not about the money. And within that, like, half a second, man, like, my brain is just processing, like, oh my God, I can do so much. Okay, so if I'm here just a few more months and I'm doing all this, right? And I was literally thinking that, like, the brain's a crazy thing, because, like, within that half a second, I swear I was processing so much, like, oh my gosh, I can do this, and the opportunity, blah blah blah. And then immediately I was like, dude, you're not even going to be able to survive in a few months. Like this isn't going to work. This isn't possible. You're about to, like, you're going to get in a car crash from lack of sleep, like, from just, like, not functioning. Like, this, and you're going to miss out on the opportunity for your animation. Like, you're going to miss all this stuff that you want. And so I immediately was able to say no. I was able to say no because I had removed myself from, relying on finances, you know. Um, so, anyways, since then, and then what ended up happening afterwards is, immediately afterwards, I stayed in Cali for a little bit longer, and I picked up some freelance projects and worked on my own portfolio again, and things moved kind of back to how they were before. I got to take some salsa classes again, meet new people, and actually go out and have a life, and things were good, right? I had savings set up, and eventually I ended up returning back to you know Illinois, and that's where I got uh, my next gig. I'm trying to remember which one it was. Yeah, shortly afterwards I got my next gig, and that's when I ended up working at a video game company where I worked on character animation, and I loved the job, and I was happy, and things were great. And ultimately, it's an important story because it's ultimately how I will eventually get the process moving along to dating and then end up marrying my wife. So it's, everything has a purpose, kind of a thing. So anyways, I guess I bring up this story because, everybody's going to have a financial situation, right? Everybody's going to have that financial stress. And, handle it how you need to handle it. But also remember that the money isn't everything. And the money can definitely occupy your mind, but eventually, like, the money isn't forever, right? The time you have with others, the things you do, those are what matter, right? And there's a whole obviously after story of this, but moving there, doing all this stuff, and then ultimately having to get myself back over, like, there is there's a lot of thinking process that happens during that time, and a lot of reflection. And I would definitely recommend to anybody out there, this situation isn't going to be for everybody, right? I had put aside savings so that I would have the ability to be safe and walk away if something like that happened, or if I was fired or whatever. So these are the kinds of things that at the time I was allowed that flexibility, that opportunity. And I did learn a lot from that experience, which I guess could be a different story. But anyways, I should probably wrap this up. It's kind of a long story. Or as I commonly say, like to make a long story short, I guess this is the short version of the story. Anyways, thank you for watching. If you've gotten this far in the video, really appreciate it. Leave a comment down below. Any thoughts, or if you have your own experiences like this, where you've had to essentially say, yeah, no, I'm good with the cash. You know, that's not important. Because especially now, like, you know, looking at it now, like, things are different, right? If I had my family, there's no way that it actually would have even gotten that bad. I would have left. I would have left. There's no way that I was going to sacrifice that much time away from the family, you know, just to make just to make it, right? It's one thing if you can't afford and you need the extra income. It's another when you're doing it strictly for the income. So, anyways, thank you for watching, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Whatever you want to do, comment down below. Actually, so I do have another video where I said, like, leave a comment down below with like a funny quote or an inspiration. But actually, maybe I should like kind of change up what the comment should be, right? So, let's make this one light, right? But no, actually, I do really want to know if anybody's kind of been in a similar situation. You know, where you've had to, you know, choose something like that, because I would like to know. I would just like to know, because I know I can't be the only one. And correction, I know I'm not the only one. But whatever it is, let me know. It doesn't even have to be in coding, because obviously, as you can tell, this story has absolutely nothing to do with code. You know, nothing to do with any of that. In fact, it doesn't even have to do with entrepreneurship either, because I wasn't working for myself either in that case. Well, a little bit on the side, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I think I've said it like 3 times now. Have a good night. Bye.